So, first of all, I must apologize. I'm between jobs, which means I'm between PowerPoint templates, which is very new to me and extremely scary. And it also means that I'm trying out a new CAD package. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Rootoftrust, which is something we see a lot. As a security vendor, I've used it a lot of times. Just starting a timer here. I've used it a lot of times, and it turns out that the customers don't know what we're talking about, and I think there are multiple opinions. So this is my take on what is and what is not a Rootoftrust. And again, here's my CAD package. So if we start with our house, which we're building our applications on top, we see that the Rootoftrust will end up as the foundation of device security. I'm also between phones, so my camera is hopeless, so the reproduction of my handwriting is horrible here, but you can see anyway. So let's start at the top. An application on a device, let's say a phone, needs to communicate securely. It's going to need some sort of verification, it's going to need some sort of encryption, it's going to need some sort of identification. Well, as you probably guessed by now, we're talking about a software/hardware stack. So the OS is in the basement, and it typically supports some encrypted file store, where the OS, where the app can store its credentials, certificates, keys, passwords, and it's going to ask the OS to do that. And the OS typically has multiple layers of secure storage. When I tried to follow how this was done in Microsoft, it's, we don't have the space for that many floors. But the concept is the same. You're still leaving, who's taking care of the password you're using to encrypt the file, you're using to encrypt the file with the password? Where are you? At some point, this has to stop. And the place where it stops needs to secure. And that's where the Rootoftrust comes in. So now we're talking about Rootoftrust as a foundation, which is something I've seen that works when we're talking about what a Rootoftrust is. When we're calling it a root, sounds a little bit weird. But if we say it's the foundation of the security, then it suddenly starts making sense. Because in my world, coming from DRM in the TV business, the Rootoftrust is always in hardware. It's on the actual device itself. And we're going to, if we have time, we're going to have a look at a couple of variants of those. So what's in this foundation? Well, a full Rootoftrust will have a root key to protect all the keys above. And again, layers of keys. And it's going to have the crypto mechanisms to do this so that the root key itself is not exposed. If you're exposing your root key to the OS, then you don't have a proper Rootoftrust. You're going to have some sort of root verification key to verify all the signatures above. And you're going to have the signature verification mechanism to verify the first step. And if you're going to need a Rootoftrust, this is the one you actually need. It's not the crypto, it's a signature verification, because that allows you to have a secure software path. This is what makes it possible for us to trust the apps we download on iOS, because Apple, in their 8 chips, have a small code starter which verifies the first part of the bootloader, which again then verifies the rest of the system updates all the way to the top. It's impossible, should be impossible if they've done the job correctly, to download something not Apple approved on an iPhone. And there's a unique identity in there that cannot be changed. And it's important that most of these keys should not be possible to change, because the user should not be able to screw this up. So, can you make a Rootoftrust in software? The answer is yes, but you need to have a very good control of your software. You need to know very well what you're doing. And anybody who knows what Oslo looks like, downtown Oslo looks like, might have seen these kind of drawings. This building here, which is 1 block away, I took this picture 40 minutes ago, is standing This entire area around this is clay, so it's fairly wobbly. So what they did was they just laid down a lot of logs, basically made a raft in the clay, put the building on top. And that works for some years. But this is not the screen messing this up. This building is actually crooked. And it took me 5 minutes to find a building that was crooked out here. If you start looking around at the old buildings, you will find that. So software root of trusts are very difficult to get correct, and they will deteriorate over time. That's the moral of this. So if you're going to say, oh, I don't have a root of trust available here, I want to make one in software, don't. You go buy it from somebody who knows what they're doing. And yes, I have a plug for that. Things to remember and some pitfalls. Somebody is managing your root of trust, and somebody needs to deploy it. You might hear people talking about virtual roots of trusts. Basically, I need to have some secrets I need to trust. I put them, basically what you do then is you just put them onto another existing root of trust. But of course, it's not a real root of trust, but it could work. Clearest example of this is downloadable SIMs. The telco operators don't want to have all these SIMs lying around, and the phone manufacturers don't have the physical space for it, because the phone is now just a battery. They don't have the space for external circuitry. So you get downloadable SIMs, which is basically this. And of course, do you trust the end user? I come from a world where I need to know where I need to be aware that the end user is malicious. But he could also be opportunistic, or most likely he's just ignorant. He doesn't know what he's doing. And in the end, when it comes to selecting your root of trust, you need to know who are you going to trust. Somebody has made this, somebody has put it in place. So I think I have 3 minutes left. Okay, so a little bit about roots of trust, starting from the top left. The Trusted Platform module, this is something that all of us has on our main boards. This is the pluggable version. I'm guessing that most of these are now embedded on the main board. When you look at what this one is for, it's not for protecting, mainly for protecting secrets. It can do that, but it's to protect the boot sequence so that malicious software doesn't get in. You could have a custom root of trust for ASICs. An example is Apple, who have their own. You will also see, I come from the TV industry again, and everybody who makes security had their own root of trust embedded into all the chips of all the chipset vendors. So in one chip from Broadcom, there might be 4 or 5 different roots of trust. You could have a subscriber identification module, as in a telephone. So we're basically, all of us are now carrying around at least 2. Or you could buy one from my employer as of yesterday, or other companies who specialize in this thing. And they are able to put roots of trust into every sort of device. It's also important to remember that a root of trust it doesn't have to be one small place. It could be multiple things. So the bootloader signature could be somewhere else than where they're keeping their passwords. Just one word about ARM Trust Zone, because that's a word that comes up a lot. And a lot of people say, well, we have ARM Trust Zone, so therefore we have a root of trust. Well, you don't have it because of, you could have it if you embed it, but you have to make it yourself. ARM Trust Zone basically just gives you, again, the building blocks for your foundation. And unlike Leka, and this is my closing words, don't try to build a root of trust yourself. Find one that's already there. And that, I think, is my time. Thank you.